Hi. So I showed a walkthrough of this album I created using the Authentique Purebred collection, and there was so much interest in how I created the album, I've decided to go ahead and do a tutorial. So let's move the album out of the way and let's get started. So I've got the instructions that I hopefully will be able to get into the description box of the YouTube video. And this is what I'm going to be following to create this album. So you need 3 pieces of chipboard. You need 2 pieces that measure 8.5 by 6.5, and you need 1 piece that measures 2.25 by 8.5. Now I've gone ahead and put score tape on the back of all of my pieces, just sort of speed us up a little bit so that you're not waiting forever as I do that part of it. And I'm using up some old 2-inch rolls I've got, so that's why I'm not using score sheets today. So you need 2 pieces of cardstock to cover the front and back cover that measure 8.5 by 10.5. So we're going to start by doing 1. And I use Tammy's wonderful idea about making a template, which helps when you go to lay down your chipboard. So I'm just going to remove the backing off of my score tape here. And I like to get side-to-side coverage, so yep, I am piecing a bit. So all we're going to do with this is 1 inch and 1 inch. And like I say, we're just going to lay down, butting this piece of chipboard right up to the edge of our template. And then we're going to do some burnishing, because you want that adhesive to adhere to the piece of cardstock. And then I am using the Artisan black cardstock, so I know that I can fold it over like this and don't really have to worry about any cracking. If you'd like to know where I get my Artisan cardstock, I get it from Country Craft Creations. If you've never tried it, I strongly suggest you give it a try. You'll never go back to anything else. So I'm just folding over all my edges. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my 3/8 tape, and I am going to run tape across the top of the cardstock, and the bottom of the cardstock, and then down each side. Notice my ruler. I probably have the only 3-inch Tim Holtz ruler. I dropped my ruler on the floor one time and I broke it, and my dear husband cut it for me, so I have a little tape cutting tool. So now we want to burnish all of this adhesive. because that's what activates it in a way. If you don't burnish it enough, then when you go to peel off the backing, it will not want to release. So now I'm going to take my scissors and I want to cut on the fold line almost up to the chipboard. Turn, try to get a little closer here, and cut up to the chipboard. And then I'm going to repeat that on all 4 corners. And just make sure you don't get too close, because I have once or twice had a little bit of the corner show, but it's when I get too close to the chipboard. And that's nothing that a little Sharpie, black Sharpie, can't hide if it ever happens. That would be my art glitter glue toppling over. So then what I do is I like to take and fold over my edges. Now this is not my way to cover a chipboard for an album. This is something Tammy at Country Craft Creations does, and I thank her for sharing that with us, because it certainly makes album making so much more enjoyable, so easy, especially if you happen to have hands that, let's say, find some of the construction in an album to be tiresome, or that it just downright hurts your hand. And so all I'm doing is I'm mitering these corners so that nothing's going to hang over. And you should be left with something, get rid of these little pieces, that looks like this. So I like to fold my top and my bottom in first, and then fold in the sides. I also like to run a bead of art glitter glue just along the edge. You can see that I just ran it along the edge of the chipboard. Sorry, my printer has just, of course, decided this is the moment it's going to clean. We'll just work through it. So now, using my handy little pick tool, I'm going to pull away the backing off of my score tape. And I'm going to pull it away off of all 4 sides. So what you want to do is you want to have the 1/4 inch adhesive on the edge of the chipboard, and then you want to have 3/8 on the cardstock itself. We're just going to turn that off. Sorry about that, but that's what happens. So you're just going to fold it over, making sure to burnish the edge of it. Burnish it down. If you've got any excess glue, you can take a dry baby wipe and soak it up with that. And I'm going to turn it around Remove the 3/8 backing off of that score tape. Run my bead of glue. And then fold it over. And like I say, doing your cover this way in 3 parts is so much better than trying to work with one huge piece at a time. And you know what? If you really mess up, you can always rip off the spine and start over, and you'll save part of your project. And fold it over. And then turn it again. Lift off the score tape. So this is probably the 5th or 6th album I've made using this method, and I would never go back to the other method. And fold. If you get any extra glue, just take a little baby wipe and dry it up. And then you want to burnish, burnish, burnish. And then you want to take, I have this trusty dusty Teflon bone folder that's got little grooves in it. And I like to use that and just rub it along the edge, just to give it that nice look, that finished, just finish it off. So there's the front cover or back cover. I don't know which one that's going to become. And let's go on, and we're going to do our spine next, because it needs a little dry time. Okay, so the spine piece, cardstock, is 5.5 by 10.5. So what you want to do with this is you want this side to have an 1.5 inch template. And then I take the same template I use for the front cover or back cover, and I lay that along the top. Now let's remove this backing. Now keep in mind that I've already burnished all of these chipboard pieces that I put adhesive on. And what you want to do is, again, you want to just butt your piece of chipboard right up to the edge of the template. And the reason we're having these wings on the side is that's what you're going to adhere to the front and back cover. So again, we want to fold. And because I'm using artisan cardstock, I know I can fold it over. If you're using other brands, you might want to test it out first on something that's, not going to be your good project. Okay. So, and then we're going to fold this way. And we're going to fold this way. But we're going to do something a little bit different on this piece. We're also going to fold it back on itself, because this is the hinge. This is the spine of the book. So you want this to flex both ways. You want to train this paper that it is okay to fold. And you can just take the little tool just to let it know you're going to fold both ways. Okay, so now I like to add my dry adhesive before I do my cutting. Some people do it that they cut first and then add adhesive. I just like side to side coverage. So that's why I tend to do this in this particular manner. And I'm going to turn, and I'm using the 3/8 score tape to take care of this. Okay, and then we're going to do some burnishing of that score tape. And burnish this side. Now, here's where you want to do some cutting, because what we want to do is we want to get rid of some of the bulk. So you're going to cut from this corner to this corner. And then turn it, and you're just going to cut again from this top corner to the bottom outside corner. Turn, so here you're cutting from this outside corner to up here. Hoping you guys can see this. And then again. So let's get rid of our scraps. Turn it back over. And I should have gone a little further on this side. It should look like this, but this will work. We'll just add some glitter glue, art glitter glue, I should say. So we want to get rid of this flap. And I just realized I did not need to run my adhesive on this piece. But that's okay. We're going to use that adhesive down the road. I'll just bend this back for right now. So I want to take my art glitter glue and just like I did on the front or back cover, or on the front and back cover, I'm going to run a bit of glitter glue right along the edge of my cardstock. And because I didn't put any dry adhesive, I'm also going to add just a bit of art glitter glue right along here. And remember, whatever adhesive you choose to use, that is your choice. There isn't a right adhesive or a wrong adhesive in my mind. So let's just give that a nice little. And then what we want to do is we want to burnish it as close to that chipboard as we can. And if you get glue spill out like that, just take your dry baby wipe and wipe it up. And then turn and repeat. That's probably one of the reasons I prefer to use dry adhesive for this process. But again, that's a personal choice. Okay, I'm just going to let that sit for a second. And then we're going to remove this piece of backing. Fold these back. And we'll run another bead of glue right along the chipboard. and then fold it over, and then taking your burnishing tool and turn. And then you can even go back to your other side. Remember, the more you work this, the nicer it's going to look. Okay, we're just going to set this aside for a little while while we cover the last piece of the cover, just so it has a chance to dry before we finish our cutting on it. So I'm going to get my last piece of cardstock for my cover. I'm going to get my template. Make sure everything is square in the corner. And remove the backing. And some people don't put full coverage on the back of the chipboard. I do, because I don't like bubbles. And we are going to again, and I like to just get my top right up against that template and then lower it down. And I'm going to move this template. We're done with that now, so you can put it aside. Turn this over, and this is actually from the Cricut, and I love it for burnishing big areas. And then we're going to add some adhesive. And I just take it a little past the corner of the chipboard, because again, I want that full coverage. So there's top and bottom. And turn. And then I'm going to take my burnishing tool. Burnish. Okay, and then we're going to do some folding. And like I say, you can fold this right over. And as you notice, I did the first cover I didn't put my score tape on first. This one, I decided to put my score tape on first. So you can do it either way. It's totally preference. All right, now we're going to take our scissors. I'm going to see if I can get up close to show you. So all we're doing is we're just cutting up to like within a 1/16 of that chipboard. And then on this other fold line, cut up until you can easily pull it out. Okay, let's do corner 2. And this is just to decrease the bulk and to give you a nice, clean corner on your book or album. And up. And up. And last one. So now we want to fold it over because you see what you want is you want to miter it. So it just gives a nice clean look. Hopefully you can see this. I hold it like that, you should be able to. And then all you do is you turn it. And you do it from the other side. Just going to go back because I don't like the way that looks. There we go, I like that better. And then let's get the other side done. So up, and you can turn. Out, and then, so just cutting up, turn, and cut. And I believe we are done. We have all four corners nicely mitered. Set my scissors aside. Don't lose them. I'm notorious for doing things like that. And then our handy dandy. So we want to start with the top and the bottom. And we can take off the sides as well. And we're going to run a bead. You know what? I forgot one right here. I knew there was one I had forgotten. Okay. So we're going to run a bead of art glitter glue. And take your scoring tool, or your burnishing tool. And turn. Remove the 3/8 score tape. And the reason you're putting the adhesive along the edge of both the cardstock and the chipboard is because when you fold it over, this adhesive is going to adhere to this part of the cardstock, and then this will adhere down onto the chipboard. It just gives it a finished, no bubble, flat look. And this little bit of glue here, we can just wipe it up. Okay, and now we're going to turn and do the sides. So it's exactly the same process. Run a bead of art glitter glue. Take your burnishing tool, and what you're doing is you're softening the fibers by running that bead. So it's already going, okay, I can stretch that far. And the last side. And wipe that little bit of glue away. Now, if you ever have anything, can you see that little pointy thing there? It's like a little burr on the corner of it. And sometimes that does happen when you're doing your mitering of the corners. And what I like to do, I'm not going to show you guys this, is I just take my scissors and carefully cut that burr away. Now can you see? Get it so that it's going to focus. It's gone. And the other three look just fine. So this is where we're at. You should have cover and a cover and a spine. So let me just move a couple of things over. So the next thing we need to do on our spine is we want to cut away some of this bulk. We don't want this showing. So when we put these two covers together, what we don't want to have happen is that we can see some of this on the outside of our book. We don't want that. So we're going to miter it just like we miter other corners, like on pockets and things like that, or on pages. So I'm just going to get as close as I can to the corner of the chipboard, and I'm going to miter it down. That's why I wanted to give it time to dry. And then we're going to do the same on the other side. And then we're just going to do it on the other end, both of the sides. And the last one. And I just want to check something out here because I believe I have a little too much overhang on this one side. And this is where our little 3-inch ruler comes in so handy. Yeah, I've got like an extra 1/4 of an inch on one side. It's not going to matter. You could cut it off if you're really going to be bothered by it. I know there's people watching this that aren't going to believe that I'm just going to leave it like that. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to turn this piece over, and we need to add some adhesive. And I do like to use dry adhesive for this. You could have done this ahead of time before you mitered the corners. Sometimes I do, and sometimes, like today, I'll do it this way. And again, I'm just using the 3/8 tape. And if it's, you can just do this. You want to make sure you got coverage right up to the edge. And then I'm just going to use a smaller piece of score tape to fill in that hole, because this is what's holding the spine to the front and back cover. So I do like to have side to side, top to bottom coverage. And I have tried using the art glitter glue to do this, and I really don't like the way you end up getting some, I'll call it squeeze out. It just kind of leaves a tacky little mess. And I'll try to show you what I'm talking about once we get this attached. Or I could show you on the finished one. So before you get rid of any of this excess adhesive, burnish it really well. And that's why I have this mat on here, is because then I don't get things stuck to my Scor Board cover. And then I'm just going to take my scissors, cut off the overhang adhesive. I do like these Teflon scissors. To do the other side. Turn and do the two remaining sides. Now, can you see? It's really hard to see. I have a little bit of adhesive overhang. We're going to deal with that when we have all the backing. That would be my dog. All the backing off of this adhesive. Okay, and I like to give it another good burnish because, well, I cut the edge of it. Okay, so I'm going to just work with one cover at a time. And this is what you want. You want, so this is the front or the outside of the spine, and you're adhering the front wing to the inside of your book. And it might be better if I work this way. Yes. So here's what you're going to want to do: is you want to make sure it's even top to bottom, that you're as close to this chipboard as possible. And that's the other thing I like about this three-part album cover. So looks good. I'm going to remove my backing. And remember, this is not my design of a cover. This is a design by Tammy Merrill from Country Craft Creations. So I'm just going to fold that back, a little overhang. And so here's what we're doing. I'm hoping you guys can see this. So I'm just lining it up as close as I possibly can and laying it down. And then we're going to turn it around, remove this backing, lost a little bit. My other cover piece, and again, I like to keep it almost up, just so if I'm not happy with my placement, it's not completely down. I'm happy with that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to burnish, burnish, burnish. Burnish, burnish, burnish. And if you look here, you can see why I wanted to cut off any extra I could to miter these, because there is a lot of paper right in this corner. You've got like 4 layers of paper right here. So, and there is the cover of our book. I love it. And it's clean. And what I was talking about, when you use a dry adhesive, a wet adhesive, you can end up with some overflow of adhesive. I just need to burnish this some more. And you don't want glue oozing out because it's just going to make a mess of your cover. So you might be saying, oh, it looks awfully wonky. And it is. Like it's quite wonky. But we're going to put this inside piece here across the spine. And that's going to give the whole book some stability. So the measurement for this piece is 6 by 8 3/8. So we're leaving 1/8 of an inch. At the top and the bottom to just so we don't have any overhang. All right, let's get our book. And yeah, we already have adhesive all over the back of our cardstock spine, but I happen to put it there on the chipboard. So I'll just have a little bit extra adhesive. It'll hold. Now, if I get in the way with my head, I apologize, but I need to be able to see the top and the bottom, centering it from side to side. So you kind of have, and I just noticed I have a little bit of overhang, so I want to make sure I've pulled that adhesive back, because it just collects dirt if you leave it sticking out. Let's try this one more time. So top and bottom, and when you're happy, gently place it. And then burnish. Burnish. Burnish it, because this is what's going to give your book its stability. And then what I do is I very gently, using my burnishing tool, ask the paper to fold in a way that it was never meant to fold. And because I'm using the artisan cardstock, I know I can fold it over. And I'm very happy with my sides because it's nice and square. I'm going to turn it around and repeat it on the other hinge of the spine. Just work it. And like I say, when you're using the artisan cardstock, it does stand up to this. Okay, and there is the cover of our book. And we finished that in about 45 minutes. Very nicely done. Yes. So I'm seeing just a little bit of adhesive there that I'm not liking. So I'm just going to take the corner of my tool, or the pick of my tool, I just push that adhesive in. All right, so there is the cover. Now, I am using a different paper line to decorate this book, and I don't plan to decorate it with you, but I do want to lay down a piece of adhesive to cover this spine piece before we add our hinge system. And I'm just going to ink the edges, so bear with me. My ink pad needs a little more ink right now, so sorry it's not going faster. All right, let's get that ink out of the way, because I'm also notorious for laying paper on my ink. So this spine piece is 2 1/4 by 8 3/8. And because of our the way we make our spine or make our book, we can have full coverage because it will still not impede the folding of the front and back cover. So I'm just going to put some glitter glue on this. And again, I'm going to make sure I have it centered top to bottom, side to side, and not impeding the mechanism of the front or back cover. And this is an option. You don't have to put a piece of pattern paper under your hinge. Sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. But I decided this time this is what I wanted to do. All right, so we are going to set aside our book for a few minutes, or our cover, and we're going to work on the hinges. So the hinge piece measures 4 by 8. So you're leaving 1/4 of an inch at the top and 1/4 of an inch at the bottom. And we are going to do some scoring. Let's get rid of my cover. And this is also Tammy's hinge system that I'm using today. So we're going to score it 1/2 inch, 1 inch, 1 1/2, 2, 2 1/2, 3, and 3 1/2. Now I've got some score tape on the back. You could use dry adhesive if you'd like. I just prefer using, or you could use wet adhesive if you like. I just prefer to use the dry. So what we're going to do is we're going to fold on this hinge or this score line, burnish it. Some people like to fold all of their score lines first. I prefer to make each hinge as I go. So there's your first hinge, and then you're going to fold it up and over, so it's going to stand up. This is the gusset, so it's the space between your hinges. You are leaving this one, and you're going to fold these two together. So this one and this one are getting folded together. So let's turn it over. So here's the adhesive on one of those hinges, or one of those, hinges, I guess is a good word. I'm folding it again. And what I like to do is I like to make sure that I'm nice and square on each side as I fold. Because sometimes when we're scoring, we just turn our hand a little bit and it's a little off. I'm going to fold this together to make our second hinge. Remember, this book has 3 pages in it. And then we're going to fold this back. And you now have hinge 2. So here's hinge 1, gusset, hinge 2. So page 1, page 2. This is going to be another gusset. So what you want to do is you want to fold this one back on the last one. And again, you want to make sure it's not hanging over on either left or right side. I'm going to remove this score tape and fold it back. And now fold it forward. And you've just created 3 hinges with 2 gussets, 1 gusset between each hinge. So you want to burnish this. And I mean burnish it well. Burnish, burnish. You want your paper to work for you, and especially with hinges, because we want them to fold left or right. So you are going to add adhesive to these 2 gussets, because that's what's going to adhere to the inside of your album, or yeah, your album. So bring your album back, and what I like to do is I like to sort of lay down some pencil lines so I know where I'm going to be putting this, and I want it to measure side to side, top to bottom, making sure, there it is. Yes, this is where my OCD gets in my way. So I have like 5/8. Give me a second here. Just see what you have. So you want it to be like a 1/16 past the 1/2 inch. I am not going to try to figure out right now what that is. So you kind of want it to be between the 1/2 inch and 5/8 inch mark. If you are OCD like me, and you have to have it straight and same distance on each side. So now top to bottom, you need about 1/4 inch at the bottom, and this should be 1/4 inch, and it is at the top. Okay, so like I say, I've got little pencil marks here, 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 and here. I know they're hard to see. And I am going to use some dry adhesive because that is my adhesive of choice when I'm laying down a spine. And like I say, everybody has their own choice or their own preference. It isn't right and it isn't wrong. It's their preference. And then burnish, burnish. Okay, and if you've got any anything hanging over the top or the bottom, meaning any adhesive, push it back. And I like just to remove part of my score tape when I'm laying down a hinge. It is my preference. If you have a different way you like to do it, please feel free. And I just need to get things lined up here again. So I want to make sure we're happy there, happy there, and it on this side. And then all we're going to do is pull down that piece of adhesive, making sure that we're still happy, and I am. Now this one. And I'll take my burnishing tool and give it a good burnish, because the last thing you want is for this to lift off. And I am happy with that. Could have been over to my right a little bit more, but that is okay, because you know what? I'm going to turn my book around, and I'm going to make this the front of my book. And the reason I'm going to make it the front of my book, if we look back at the original, we have a lot of bulk sitting on this front cover. So having this little bit of extra room on this side of our hinge will help with this bulk. Okay. So now we're going to work on these 3 pages we're going to put in this book. And these 3 pages all measure, let's clear this mess off a little bit. These 3 pages all measure 8 by 12. And I'm just going to score one with you. So with the 12-inch side along the top, we are going to score at 6. And like I said to you before, because I'm using Artisan, I know my paper can withstand. And fold it back. Make sure it's square. And give that score line a good burnish. So let's get our book back in here. And I am going to start with the last page first. And this is also Tammy's new lay flat page system. And so that is what we are going to be doing here. So we are going to start with the back of this. No, we're going to start with the front of this page. So I am going to take some dry adhesive, or wet adhesive, and I'm going to run it, giving myself some really nice coverage. And then I'm going to take the front of this particular page. I don't want to go into the gusset. So just to the score line that created this hinge. And then take your baby wipe if there's any excess, and then burnish and burnish. And if there's any extra, wipe it off. Now we're just going to turn it around. Okay. And I just want to see one thing. Am I happy with this? Yes, I'll be happy with this. So we are going to add adhesive to the other side of the hinge. Plus run a bead of glue along the bottom. Fold it over, making sure if any glue does happen to ooze out, you have your baby wipe to dry it up. And when you're happy, catching that glue that might squeeze out, because it does happen. That's the joys of liquid glue. Okay, so now you have a pocket up here at the top that we can put an insert in, or you can glue it shut. That's totally your preference. And then we're going to go on to page 2. So we need to fold page 2, and I'm going to fold page 3 at the same time. Burnish, and then we'll get page 3, and do the same. Burnish. Bring the book back in. Now this is where you want to make sure you have everything going the right way. So this is the top of my book. This is the bottom of my book. This is the back of my book or album. And again, so now I have rotated it. So this is the top, this is the bottom, because this is my insert. So this is the back. I want to lay page 2, my next page, like so. Fold this over and make sure that everything is square. So you want to look over here, lift it up so you can see. If you look here, it's nice and square with the page that's below it. That's why I like to always start at the back of the book and work forward. And I like to do the front of the page to the hinge first. It's just much easier than going the other way around, because you can see what you're doing. Okay, and just slide this back in, making sure we're happy. And lining it up, making sure that we're happy with, because you want to be more concerned about whether it's square and straight out here than back here at the hinge. You're going to cover it with pattern paper. Nobody's going to see it. I know, from an OCD person saying nobody's going to see it. Then burnish it. And then turn it over and do the back side. And this is when you want to make sure, so you're not only putting some oozing out glue that I don't like. You're not only putting your adhesive along the hinge, don't want that there, but you're putting a bead of glue along the bottom. And then you're just going to fold this back on itself, making sure if you got any glue that comes oozing out, to give it a good wipe. And that's the nice thing about the art glitter glue. It dries clear. Or virtually clear. And you know what? If you have glue someplace and you can see it, if you take one of these handy dandy little tacky glue adhesive picker-uppers, you can get some of it off. I've just discovered that recently. Like, it's not perfect, but you hardly notice it. Okay, so there's our page 2, and now we're ready to put our last page down. So again, I'm going to say to you, make sure you have your opening to your right. Okay, you're going to take this last page and doing exactly what you did on the other two, lay it down on your hinge. Make sure that it's nice and square at this edge. So this is the fold edge. And if it is, then add some adhesive to your hinge. Now, not liking what I did there, so okay, and then I want to make sure. Yes, I'm still happy. So now burnish. And the thing I like about Tammy's new hinge system is you don't have that 1/4 inch that's sticking out here. It just looks nice and clean. And then you're going to fold it over. So remember, I've now turned the book around, and your inserts are to your left now. And we're running a bead of glue. And like I say, I haven't decided if I'm going to close up these in the top or if I'm going to leave it open and put inserts in them. I haven't gotten that far with this particular project. So I have a choice. I'm going to leave it open for now. I sometimes think I use way too much glue. Burnish, burnish. Picking up any glue that comes squirting out. And you now have 3 lay flat pages in a lay flat album. 2 and 3. And now what we're going to start doing is we are going to start working on our pages and our inside, front, and back cover. So I have some flaps for page 1. I'll give you the measurements for those first. So for page 1, you have one piece that measures 6 by 8. You have a second piece that measures 7 by 5.5. And you have a third piece that measures 6 by 5. And then we have a smaller piece that measures 1.5 by 5 and 5.25. So we are going to score these pieces. So I'm going to score my band on the 5.25 side at 1/2. Then I'm going to take our piece that is 7 by 5.5 and score it at 1/2. Sorry, I got them out of order. And our piece that's 5 by 6, score it at 1/2 on the 5-inch side. And then our piece that is 8 by 6 on the 6-inch side, score it at 1/2. So when I say on the 6-inch side, I'm meaning have the 6-inch side at the top of your scoreboard. And then we are going to burnish some score lines. Our last page. And our little band. Now, I like to have my corners, if I'm going to round them or anything, to do that before I put them in the book. So I'm using the We Are Memory Keepers, and it's the scallop punch I'm using. So I'm going to do this side, and I'm going to do this side. And I like to, if I have everything lined up, which it's probably not going to do for me today, I have everything lined up nicely. I like to do my rounding on all my pieces at the same time. And I'm going to move it. And that is another reason why I love these crocodiles. Make sure, so all you want to do is make sure that they're all square to the corner. And this again is preference. It's not something you have to do or you don't have to do. It's what I like to do. Okay, so these 3 flaps are going in the book. So on the front of page 1, they are going to be adhered to the right-hand side of the page. And what I like to do is I like to adhere the 3 flaps to each other and then put it in the book. And that way I get to use my scoreboard as my guide, because each of these pieces is a 1/2 inch smaller than the one that I'm layering it to. So we're going to get the art glitter glue. And I'm not mitering any corners on these two flaps that I'm laying down because they're not going to be showing once the pattern paper gets on. So make sure you got it square to the corner. And then, like I say, because I know that it's going to be a 1/2 inch smaller, that's how I am adhering it. And then just wipe up any overflow. Give it a good burnish. Okay. And burnish it on this side too. I want to just move it ever so slightly. I had a little bit hanging over, and I don't want that. And if you get it right away, you can still lift up the art glitter glue. It gives you just a tad of wiggle room. So now let's do the smallest one, smallest flap. Again, putting adhesive along that flap and adhere it down, making sure that you're happy that you don't have any of it overhanging. Clean up the glue. Give it a good burnish. Fold it back. I just find it's easier to do this when it's not in the book. Okay, so now let's get the book back up here. And I do plan to miter the 8-inch flap. I'm going to miter the corners. So just slight miter. And I always like to cut from my fold to the raw edge. Then I never cut into my fold line. So this is going to fit top to bottom and side, or top to bottom, and you don't want it hanging over that edge. So I'm going to be happy with that. And I'm going to put some adhesive. Got a little bit too much there, like I say. I sometimes do get carried away with my adhesive. I just got to get my head down in here so I can see what I'm doing. I apologize if it's getting in the way. Making sure that we're happy. She's still got a little time. There we go. And then we want to burnish this, so flip it open. And with my tool, give it a good burnish. Whoops. Like I say, me and glue. You'd think I would have learned how to use glue. And wipe up anything that spills out. Burnish, burnish, burnish. Okay, so then what we've created is flaps. Lots of real estate for pictures. Now, we still have this little tab. And what this little tab is going to do is, with a magnet, it is going to hold these pages shut. So we're creating this right here that is holding down these 3 pages. So we want to center it in the middle of this page. And I am, believe it or not, going to eyeball it. So we're going to give it, add some adhesive to that score line, or that score, half-inch score that we created. And then making sure, and I said I wasn't going to measure, but OCD is getting in my way. So was it like 3 1/4? Look at that. Pretty good, if I do say so. Burnish, burnish, burnish. Okay, and then we want to add a magnet. So we need a positive and a negative. And I like to, my little picky tool, there it is. I like to make sure that I give myself at least a thumb's, move it over a little bit, at least a thumb, just so my paper is going to, my pattern paper will adhere around the magnet. And then I take it off, and I do like to put a bit of score tape over my magnets. And if I don't do magnets now, I will forget magnets. It has happened. And then what you're doing is hold down your pages and gently, and then slide or lift, whatever seems to work. Cover this with some score tape. And what the score tape is going to do, your magnet won't move around then, just in case, because you'd hate to have your pattern paper on it and then discover your magnet has shifted. So we're going to turn to the back of page 2, or page 1, I should say. And on the back of page 1 are these 2 flips. One goes to the left and one goes to the right. And these are super easy to do. So what we need is 2 pieces. And they both measure 6 by 5. And we are scoring them at 1/2. And we're doing that to both of them. We're going to fold, burnish, fold, and burnish. And I want to round my corners. So I'm going to, hang on here a second. I think we have one that just might be 5.5. Just going to give this one a trim because I've noticed it's ever so slight. So give me a second while I go to my trimmer. That would bother me. There we go. One moment. I'm not sure what was going on there, but we fixed it. Okay, we're going to round our corners. Get the book back here. So this is the back of page 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adhere one of the flaps about 1/4 of an inch down from the top of the left-hand side. So we're going to put some adhesive on our flap. And clean that up. And like I say, about 1/4, because I'm going to want the pattern paper that I'm putting on this page to peek out from underneath. Now, I did not put a magnet on this page. I thought and believed that the pattern paper would hold it, and it did. You could put a magnet. You could add some seam binding and tie it. Or you could just do it the way I'm going to do it, which is not adhere it, or not have a magnet closure. Okay, and I just want to keep it about 1/4 of an inch up. 1/4 of an inch up from the bottom. Make sure it's not going to impede the folding of this page. And so what I would do before I have it completely adhered down is just turn my page. It's fine. Open. And again, burnish. And that is the front and back of page 1 finished. So page 2 front is a set of pockets. So it's right here. We have 2 pockets, top and bottom, or yeah, top and bottom. Now I am going to get my pattern paper that I'm using. I'm not going to get my pattern paper that I'm using because it's kind of walked away. What else is new? So, let's give you the measurements first. So the first pocket is, or the 2 pockets are 5 by 4. On the 5-inch side, we're scoring at 1/2, and we're rotating and scoring at 1/2. And on the 4-inch side, we're only scoring at 1/2, and we do that to both pockets. And I'm going to burnish my score lines. And then repeat. Just going to look under, because I thought I had the pattern paper with me. Nope. So we are going to use I am going to stop the video for a second because I just want to find that pattern paper and come back and continue. All right, so I found my pattern paper. And I've cut a piece that is 7 7/8 by, I did about 3 3/4. And I want to adhere that first before I lay these pockets down. And since I sometimes find this black paper tries to blend in with the pieces behind it, I'm just going to put a piece of white under it so that I can see what I am doing. All right, so let's get some adhesive on the back of this piece of pattern paper. Now you can lay your pockets down. It's total preference. I just want my pattern paper to look like it's going completely under my pockets. And since I already know what paper I'm going to use to complete this particular album, so I just want to, sorry I hit the camera, top to bottom, side to side, and if I'm happy, use my baby wipe to get out any extra, and then all right, so our 2 pockets. So we need to do some cutting on our pockets. We want to get rid of the bulk in the corners at the bottom. So you see this? There is an X right here where your score lines intersect. I'm going to cut right through that X. And that allows all that bulk to be removed from the corner of my pocket. And I'm going to repeat on this other side. So I'm cutting right through the X. And then I want to miter at the top of the pocket. Let's get rid of this. And let's repeat on the other pocket. So again, we want to cut right through the X, miter the top, cut through the X on the bottom of the other pocket. And I know it's hard to see with the black paper, but I am out of craft paper and am patiently waiting for some to arrive. So you just want to burnish these very well. Just so they're nice and flat. Yeah. So I want to kind of dry fit them first. And that's where this piece of white paper is going to come in very handy. So you want to make sure that your 2 pockets are going to lay nicely with no overhang at the top or the bottom. And I'm going to be very happy with that. So now we're going to add some adhesive on the flaps that we burnished. All right, so nice and straight, but not overhanging. You want it to go right to the edge. Okay. And quickly, let's just make sure we're going to be happy still. Yes. Okay, so we can give this a good burnish. And then using our burnishing tool. And I always like to make sure that I run something down inside, making sure there's no glue that's oozed out that's going to end up making your pocket closed. So another way you can do your pockets is just put glue along the bottom of it. Okay. And then what you're going to do is open it. Any glue that's oozing out, wipe it up with a baby wipe. Remember, you're still putting pattern paper down, so, you know, you can hide a lot of stuff. And then slowly, carefully, making sure that everything is still nice and square. Now remember, the art glitter glue dries clear, so this little bit of glue you're seeing right here, by the time it dries, you won't even see it. And then there are your two pockets. And we have, for those two pockets, 4 photo mat inserts. I'm going to move the book for a second, the album, and they measure 3.5 by 5. I think in the original I said they were 3 by 4s, but when I measured them to cut for this album, I discovered that they were 3.5 by 5. So I'm putting 2 in each pocket. So I am rounding the corners of these 2 at a time. You can round them 1 at a time. I don't know if all 4 would go in there. It might, but I think it could be a bit much for the little crocodile here. And I don't want to bust it. So there's 2. Yes. And this is exactly what I was talking about. Good. There's 2 for that pocket. And last. And they go in the other pocket. So that is the front of page 2. So I'm just going to move my white paper, and we are moving on to the back of page 2. So the back of page 2 and the front of page 3 actually mirror each other. So they have 2 I like to call these zigzag fold-outs. I'm sure there's another name for them, but I call them a zigzag fold-out. And they are exactly the same on the back of page 2 and the front of page 3. There is a magnet on both of these pages. So just let me get to those instructions. So in the instructions, I refer to them as zigzag flaps. So let's move our book. And they measure 4 3/4 by 11. So on the 11-inch side, you are going to score, I wish I was a neat crafter, you are going to score at 1/2, 4, and 7 1/2. You're going to score back, fold the 1 1/2-inch score line, and you're going to fold that back, because this is what's getting adhered to the book. You're going to fold forward. That would be the glue hitting the floor. Sorry about that. And then you're going to fold back, making sure that it is nice and square. So let's repeat that for the front of page 3. So you're going to fold back your 1/2-inch score line, because that's what's going to attach to the book on this side. You are going to fold forward, and then you are going to fold back, making sure it's nice and square. I am going to round these corners. And around the corners on this one. So I am not rounding my flap side, that 1/2-inch flap that you're going to adhere to the page. I'm rounding the other side. All right, so let's get the book back up here. And basically what I'm going to do is one is going to be on the right-hand side. I'm going to say, oh, pardon me, it's actually going to be at the bottom on the right-hand side. About 3/4 of an inch up from the bottom. Maybe a 1/2 an inch. No, 3/4. In there someplace, whatever you like. You could put it in the center. You could put it at the top. It's totally your preference. Where would you like this to go? I'm actually, no, I like them off center. So like I said, about 3/4 of an inch from the bottom. I'm not mitering the tab. Because it's going to have paper, pattern paper. Covering quite nicely. You don't want it hanging over the page, so you can always check that too, at least I would. And then burnish. And then we're just going to move over to page 3 front. And again, it's about 3/4 of an inch down from the top. And just to let you know, just to remind you, I used one, I believe it was a collection pack. and one 6x6 paper pad for the pattern paper, plus a couple of additional matching colored cardstock. I happened to use Spectrum when I did it for the purebred. That was my OCD again. And I want to make sure it's except I'm not going to be happy with that. It's too far away from the edge of the page. And that is the other nice thing about the artisan cardstock. You can actually lift it up like this if you do it right away, and it will not rip. Just want to, there we go. I'm just gonna gentle because I just want to see if I'm still happy, and I am. I was just a little concerned there might have been some overhang from this, but there was not. My instructions falling on the floor. So I said we are going to hold these zigzag flaps in place with 2 magnets, or a set of magnets for each one. So let's get a negative, or positive, I should say. I have a lot of trouble getting these magnets out. To the point sometimes I actually have to cut them. The plastic. There's one set. And there's 2 sets. Now, you are going to attach one magnet here and the other magnet to the base of the page, or to the actual page itself. So what I like to do is I am going to use my negatives on the top zigzag flap. And I want to make sure it's in a good thumb width at here, so it's almost in the center. And then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to let it find its mate. And then gently, there's one side done. So again, I am going to use the negative magnet on the zigzag flap. Again, sort of a thumb's width and centered. And then I'm just going to fold and let it find its mate. Lift off the covering on the adhesive of the positive, and voila. And then I'm just going to take a little adhesive and again on this side. And again, like I said earlier, I use the dry adhesive tape so that my magnets are not going to get away on me. And then zigzag out and zigzag out. You can see it. Okay, we are on to the back of page 3. Now, the back of page 3 is another set of flaps. Only these flaps go from the top of the page. So we're going to create this just the way we created the one on the front of page 1. So we need 3 pieces. Okay. And the 3 pieces measure 5 by 8, and we're scoring at 1/2. 4 by 7.5, scoring at 1/2. And then what's going to hold it closed is another little band that is 1.5 by 3, and we're scoring at 1/2. So we're going to fold all these tabs and burnish them. And for some reason, this tab just decided to be crooked. So I just want to fix that. There we go. I'll be happy with that. I want to round the edges of it. And then we're going to burnish one flap. And I like to, when I'm going to burnish a flap, see this 1/2-inch tab? I like to fold back on it and then burnish from the front. I don't like to burnish this way because I find then I sometimes skew the tab and it doesn't stay straight. So that's just my little trick. Don't know where I learned that. Just something I learned along my journey. So again, I'm going to use the Scor Board as a tool. And what I want this to be is 1/2 inch and 1/2 inch. But before I do that, let's round our corners. Okay. And like I say, you can do this one at a time. You don't have to do the both at the same time. That's just what I tend to do. All right, now let's do some adhering. We only have the front inside cover and the back inside cover. So you want to make sure you've got 1/2 inch on each side. I think I'd be happy with that. I just got to do a little quick. Yeah, I'm a happy lady. Burnish. Wipe up any extra glue. And then we're ready to get the book back in. And again, what you want to do is you want to leave 1/2 inch on each side. So you want to center it left to right with about 1/2 inch on each side. You can measure, you can eyeball it, you can do basically whatever works for you. What works for one person may not work for the next person. So you want to be about a ½ inch from the left, ½ inch from the right, making sure you're right on the top of the page. If you need to measure, you can do so. I am very happy with that. So I'm going to burnish down. And again, you don't have to use a magnet to close this. You could use seam binding. You could use perhaps a paper clip. So with this little tab, I want to center it right in the middle. Center it left to right. I'm just going to use my ruler to make me happy. I am happy with that. So lift it up, hold it in place so it doesn't move around on you, and just adhere it back down. I really do have an OCD problem. And now all we need to do is add a magnet. And I just want to check something out in the actual book. I believe in this book, I actually adhered the magnet to this back page, like to the base page. That's what I wanted to check because I was thinking of doing this, and I think I will. I'll show you. Because I know that the paper I'm using to cover this album with, it's an old paper design. It's very heavy. I'm thinking so this is the negative side that I'm adhering to the tab in the center. I'm going to do it this way because this is the easiest way to get all these pages down. I don't want to put my magnet on the front of this page because it does leave a little bump. So just like so, and then like so. So I'm going to put a little adhesive, dry adhesive, to hold my magnets in place. All right, and while we are at the back of the book, we are going to do the inside of the back cover. And it is a very simple just a pocket. I just have to okay. So our pocket for the inside back cover measures 4 by 7. On the 7-inch side, you are scoring at 1/2, rotating because I find it much easier to score at 1/2, and then rotating again and only 1/2 on the 4-inch side. So we are going to fold on those score lines, burnish those score lines, okay, and just like those 2 matching pockets we created, we are going to miter our corners, or our corners, and then the top, so nothing gets caught up on it. Miter and this. And then burnish again. Just check to make sure you've got no overlap, because you want to get rid of that if you do, because that's just extra bulk. Get our book back up here. And we want to make sure that we are not impeding on this we don't want to impede on the mechanism of the back of the book folding or closing. So I will be happy with that. And then I want to make sure I have it at the bottom. And then I'm going to burnish and wipe my glue if I've got any seeping out. And there's your pocket. And like I say, stuff something down inside it. And here are my mats for this pocket. And of course I'm going to round the corners. I really like this scalp punch. And so all right, so that's the back inside page. Let's move over here to the front. And so the front of this book has a lot going on, the front inside cover. Now, on this particular book, I did not put a magnet on this flap, and I wish I had. So it opens to the right, and then you have a waterfall that has 4 pages, and then there is a pocket, and this is all on a flap that goes to the left. We are going to create this left flap before we put it in the book. So few things going on. So let's just move the book. So you're going to need a piece that is 6.5 by 8, and on the 6.5 side you are going to score it 1/2. So we are going to fold on that score line and burnish. And I believe I did round these corners. Okay, so I'm just going to set this aside. And then I have a pocket. And we are going to fold our pocket. Oh, measurements would be nice. It is 7 by 3, and you're scoring at 1/2, rotating, scoring at 1/2, and on the 3-inch side you're only scoring at 1/2. And what I'm going to do is we're going to do all our burnishing of the score lines. I'm going to do all my mitering, and then we're going to assemble this. So again, we want to cut away our bulk at the bottom of the pocket. So cut through the X on both sides. And miter the top. Okay. And then burnish it again. And you might want to just double check that nothing's going to hang over, and nothing is. Now, we want to round the right bottom corner of this pocket because it's going on the bottom of this flap, and we round it this corner. So just put it in your punch. And then what you want to do is see these little, this wonky looking little tab now, cut it back like so. So you're not going to see any of that. So now, when we adhere this down, we are going to have a nice rounded corner on the pocket as well as the page. Now, I have 4 flaps that are going to create the waterfall. They each measure 5 by 6. So you're going to cut 4 of those. And you're going to fold on the score line and miter, or burnish, sorry. You are not going to miter these tabs because this is a waterfall we're creating. And I like to create my waterfall with a base. And this flap is that base. Now, this is the only time we are not going to round our corner first. But I am, so on the very top waterfall, I want to round the top right corner of it because the top right corner of this flap has been rounded. So again, I'm just going to round it And then with this wonky edge, I'm going to miter it back. And the nice thing is when you have a base to create your waterfall on, you keep things straight. So I'm going to add my adhesive to the first flap of my waterfall. And I want to make sure I am right at the top, making sure that my corner matches. I'm happy with that. And I want to burnish it. And then we're going to do our second waterfall, our second page of the waterfall. And we're not going to round this corner. And burnish. And I see I have just a little overhang, so I'm just going to get rid of it. Just a little trim. I'm just going to check. This one seems fine, so it was just that one. And again, we're going to add adhesive to the tab. And burnish. I have lost. I had lost my diaper wipe. Isn't it amazing how things just disappear on us? Again, adhesive on the tab. And there's your waterfall. And then we're going to adhere our pocket to the bottom. I am going to turn it around to adhere my pocket. Just going to move my waterfall. And just making sure, I hope I'm not in the picture. And on the tabs on the side. Making sure if there's any extra glue, we wipe it up. And that is the front of the left side of the cover, inside front cover. So it is about a ½ inch shorter than the actual cover. So you're going to center it top to bottom and adhere it to the left-hand side of the inside of the front cover. So I don't need to miter because I'm not going right to the top. You don't want to lay down your pattern paper because you are going to cover the inside after you lay the flap down with your pattern paper. Okay, so let's get my adhesive on here. And about 1/4 inch at either the top or the bottom. Make sure you wipe up any glue that might seep out. And that is the left-hand side of this element. And we have 2 sets of 2 different size photo mats. One set is 4.5 by 3.5. The other set is 6 by 4. I am going to round these corners. And as for the decorating of the pages, you can go back and go through the walkthrough of the album, or you can decorate it the way you would like to decorate it. Okay, so now this is the flap that goes on the right-hand side of the inside front cover. We are going to round the corners on this flap. And then what you want to do is we want to make sure that we are centering it up where it needs to be. So something, because you don't want to be impeding the folding of the book. Okay, just going to take these photo mats out for a little bit because they're going to get in my way. I just know it. All right. I want to be close to that spine, but I do not want to impede the spine, and I want to keep it centered top to bottom so it's nice and square. I'm happy with that. And I'm going to open it and burnish. So what I was talking about earlier is I didn't need to miter these corners because they're not going to the top of the page. And I'm going to lay my pattern paper down after I have this element in the book. So now we can put our photo mats back in this lovely pocket. And we are going to add our next magnets. So we used 5 of the 6 sets of magnets. So you almost use a whole package of magnets. So you might want to use some seam binding. This would be a very good place to put seam binding down. You could put seam binding here and then have it adhere back, or even under this flap. But I'm going to use a magnet because I do like magnets. So what we got going? Oh, that would be because you took out 2 negatives, Bonnie. So I am going to adhere my first magnet, and I'm going to adhere this magnet to the front of this waterfall, because if I try to put it here, there is so much bulk in this side, this flap, it will not catch here. So I'm going to sort of measure a thumb up so that I'm going to make sure that I have lots of pattern paper below it, so it's not going to have a little bump on it. And then use my tool and I will be much happier with this. I may go back in that other book. I have to check and see if I've got any paper, because you use all of the collection pack. Sorry. And that is that side. And we have finished the construction of my album. Let's get this in here before it dries out on me. I'm notorious for doing that too, forgetting to put my pin back in. And I want to give a shout out. So Janice Donahue made this for me and gave it to me before Christmas. Janice, I use it all the time and I love it. Thank you. So, just to recap, this is our element on the inside front cover and our waterfall with photo mats. And we have the flaps. And this is the only page I didn't put a magnet. I may go back and put a magnet, I don't know. But I know in the original book it folds and holds well. Our matching pockets with photo inserts. Our zigzag mirror flat pages. Our flap that opens to the top. And a pocket on the inside back cover. So we have completed our album. I love it. I hope you enjoy making it, and I hope you will post pictures of it on Country Craft Creation. if you use materials from Country Crash Creations, or you can post pictures on the Country Craft Social Cafe, I believe. I'll try to link it in the bottom of the description. So thank you very much for watching, and I'd love if you would subscribe to my YouTube channel. Have a great day. Bye.